Hi guys, welcome back to BEA'S Creations. In today's video, I'll be sharing the making of this beautiful dress, McCall's 8037. I will list the fabric info in the description box below. If you are interested, please keep on watching. I've already cut pattern piece number 1, bodice back, pattern piece number 2, bodice front, pattern piece number 3, skirt front, pattern piece number 4, skirt back, pattern piece number 6, the sleeves. I've also cut pattern piece number 7, which is the dress tie. This is how I added length to the pattern skirt front and back. I wanted my dress to be longer. Let's start sewing. To stabilize the shoulders, I added seam binding over both shoulders. After that, I went ahead and did a 5/8 of an inch narrow hem at the neck edges of the bodice back. Next, I've already pinned bodice back to bodice front at the shoulder edges. Base stitch both shoulders. Fold over the front along the fold line over the back bodice. I'm going to stitch over the basting stitch. I'm stitching it again about 1/4 of an inch away from the first stitch to form a double stitch. And that's how that looks. I've already pinned the bodice front to the bodice back at the side seams. Now I'm stitching 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and back stitch at the end. I'm stitching it again to form a double stitch. And that's how that looks. To begin sewing the skirt, I've already pinned skirt front together at the center seams. I'm stitching 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, I stop stitching at the large circle and backstitch there. Clip the left seam of the front skirt about 3/8 of an inch above the large circle. Stitch it again 1/4 of an inch away from the first stitch to form a double stitch. Be sure to stop stitching right above the clip and backstitch there. I've pinned center back skirt together like so. Stitch 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, backstitch at the beginning and backstitch at the end. Stitch it again to make a double stitch. And stitch the other side the same way. Pin the skirt front and the skirt back together at the side seam. Stitch 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, backstitch at the beginning and backstitch at the end. Stitch it again close to the first stitch to make a double stitch. And that's how that looks. With right side together, pin the bodice to the skirt, matching the center seams and all notches. I'm going to base stitch and then stitch on top of the base stitching. To form the casing for the elastic, I'm stitching the seam allowance 1/4 of an inch from the war edges. And also leaving an opening between the two circles. I use pattern piece number 5, which is the elastic guide, to cut the elastic. Insert the elastic using a safety pin. Now I'm stitching the ends of the elastic to secure it. I've already pinned both sleeve edges together at the side seams. Stitch 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Stitch again to make a double stitch. Now I'm pinning the sleeves to the armhole, matching the big circle to the shoulder seam. I'm going to stitch it, and be sure to make a double stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And that's how that looks. I did a folded hem for the lower edges. Next, I'm going to do a narrow hem for the opening edge of the dress. I place the needle and stitch it very close to the edge. Pivoting at the large circle and continue to stitch. Next, to hem the lower edge of the dress, I'm running here a 1-inch straight stitch, then I folded another 1 inch. Also pull the thread to ease in fullness. I'm stitching it very close to the edge. And that's how I did my narrow hem. I folded the dress tie along the fold line. Leaving an opening here to turn the tie right side out. Stitch 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. I've already trimmed the seam allowance. Now I'm turning the tie right side out using a point turner to do so. I'm gonna use a needle to hand sew and close the opening. To tie a knot, I slip the tie through the opening between the skirt seam allowance and the elastic, and I tied it into a knot. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.